Welcome back. Well, today we have a interesting topic. This is the first time I've seen anything like this. We have in Japan an HLC elder, Jehovah's Witness elder, HLC. He was disfellowshipped for resist against the society. And so today we're going to look at this story. I'm going to pull up the elder's book. We're going to take a look at the elder's book. And first of all, we're going to go to the lawyer. Now, this fella, his name is not given out. It's they use a synonym, a fake name. And so here's his lawyer, XJW support attorney. He's out of Japan, the Japanese lawyer. And this is all up with the second generation. This is all coming out. So here he is, a former elder who served as the HLC member. Now that's, in case you don't know, that's Hospital Liaison Committee. And I can put a link in at the end of this video to some more information we have on that subject. So anyways, this elder, he served as an HLC member, and he dealt with programs at the district convention. So here he's a young elder in his 30s, and they're using him in all kinds of ways. It says here Kingdom Ministry School. He taught elders, school for elders, etc. Talks about his own unfair disfellowshipping, subsequent harsh shunning, and judicial committee he experienced. We're going to look at the full story. Now, there's a picture of him right there, and the lawyer says he was judged by a committee of 8 elders, including a circuit overseer, a special pioneer sent by Bethel. Now, I was looking at the elder's book, and the only thing I can see there is, and I read that we'll look at this a little further, but it looks to me like he appealed it. So then you have 6 elders. And then you have the circuit overseer, that's 7, and then they sent out someone from Bethel, 8. Very unusual, very unusual. It's not in the elder's book, any of that stuff. So I could see the appeal where you get the circuit overseer is involved and he selects 3 other elders. The reason why he was disfellowshipped was resist against society. So now there is a video here. Let's take a look at this video. And I'll put the subtitles on, so we'll just get that going here. Okay, this is a 5-minute video. I have the subtitles turned on, and I have the voice turned down. So if you speak Japanese, you can understand it, and if you don't, you can see the English subtitles. So here we go.
顔を出してゼロの取材に応じた男性。キリスト教系の宗教団体エホバの証人の元幹部です。
私は長老という立場で医療機関連絡委員という、さらに選ばれたグループの中に所属して、輸血拒否に関する活動をしていた。
選ばれた人しかならない部署というか、
そうですね。はい。
教団幹部として輸血拒否などの教えを広める立場だったといいます。
都合の良い情報だけ信者たちに流してますんで、この方は、本当は輸血すれば助かったけど亡くなりましたよっていう情報は一切伏せてしまうので。
男性は10年前、一度他の幹部の行動について意見をしたところ、排斥という処分を受け波紋に。
排斥イコール、もう悪魔サタンであると、人間ではないと。
ご実家に帰れない
ですね。一度だけですね、その実家に赴いて話しかけようとしまして、お前は危険人物だから、不審だし警察に連絡すると。これまで7年間一度も会えてない。
あまりに厳格な教団の教え。これは今日エホバの証人の2世らを支援する弁護団が公開した266ページにわたる調査報告書。
虐待行為が日本全国であまねく数十年にわたり行われてきた。
全国の元2世ら581人へのアンケート結果などから、教団の教義が宗教虐待に当たると訴えました。報告書では回答者の 92% が鞭打ちを受けたことがあると回答。多くの場合が十数年の期間にわたっていて、鞭の種類も素手からベルト、ベルトからホースというように徐々に痛みの強いものに変わるケースが報告されました。また教団側が聖書の言葉に従いたいとの願いから輸血を拒否している問題については、回答者の 81% が輸血拒否カードを所持していたことがあると答え、大半が保護者から言われたからと回答しました。今日、教団の教義が宗教虐待に当たると子ども家庭庁に通告した弁護団。共に声を上げたのは、
当事者として、言いたいことは一つだけです。とにかく社会に実態を知っていただきたい。
宗教3世の直人さんです。
これ今手に持っていらっしゃるものは、
今僕の治療記録、カルテですね。
ゼロに見せてくれたのは医師のカルテ。
家族がエホバの証人で輸血等はできないと、それらの説明が書いてあるっていうことがとても異常なことだと。
直人さんは10歳の時に心臓に異常が見つかり、医師からは輸血が必要な手術を勧められたといいますが、両親は最後まで輸血を拒否したといいます。さらに、
教えを信仰しているので輸血はできませんと、そう言いなさいと僕の言葉で説明はするんですけど、信仰心が足りない、いやいや説明をしているように見えると、そうした理由から、親から鞭を受けました。
鞭というのはどういったふうに受けるんですか？
母親は孫の手などを使って、僕をぶつみたいな。
成人して自分で手術という選択を選べるようになるまで8年間手術ができなかった直人さん。
教団に対しての思いというのはありますか？
両親たちに対する怒りっていうものは消えません。その指示をしたのは教団の教えです。教団の教えが、家庭を崩壊させているのではと感じています。
一方、教団側は日本テレビの取材に対し、弁護団の調査の事実関係がわからないとした上で、近日中にプレスリリースをお送りする予定だとしています。
Okay, so now we're going to switch over and look at a news article on this. But as you can see from the video, if you're following the subtitles, there's a lot going on in Japan right now. Everyone's coming forth. Everyone's pleading their case. And all of these abuse cases are coming out. And it's everything from, let me just look at the article here. It's everything from... this individual that we seen. I'll just put up on the screen here what I'm looking at. So this individual here is the one, the HLC member. And some of the other issues that are coming out, this one lady was punched in the chest, was sexually assaulted. There's other ones. Third generation speaks of the shock of parents refusing heart surgery for their son. The young man went 8 years until he was 18 and he could choose his own heart surgery. Sounds of children crying from toilets in small rooms. It sounds like there was a lot of abuse in Japan through the religion, religious sanctified. And the further we look at this, there's abuse all over. We look in our own backyard with Jehovah's Witnesses. We find that now it seems like we're in that age that this is all coming out. The second and third generations are speaking about it. So, and then the video went on to talk about Jehovah's Witnesses urge members not to give blood transfusions to children, even after the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare guidelines say it constitutes abuse. So this is all coming out. Now, what we're going to take a look at is we're going to zoom in on this this fella here, and look at this article. It's really interesting what led up to the HLC member. And so here it starts out. It says, why did you have sex outside of marriage? So he's in an elders meeting and he's just kind of reminiscing. So it starts out like that. Why did you have sex outside of marriage? 3 cult leaders wearing black suits sit in a semicircle surrounding a man in his 30s who looks down. Temptation of the devil. Jehovah's Witness elders about sexual intercourse, that's what they called it. Keto Nia is a pseudonym, who was sitting as a member of the Jehovah's Witness leaders, described the man in front of him as possessed by the devil. And he believed that it existed and stared at it with a cold gaze. The inquiry committee examines members who violate the doctrines of Jehovah's Witnesses. Little did he know that a few years later, he would be facing the same gaze. So this is this fella right here. He goes by the pseudonym Kita Neo, this fella right above me. So, so he was the elder looking at these people with that gaze, and then now he's in that situation. So he goes on to give a little bit of his story right here. He says, I was taken by my mother, who became a believer out of loneliness. From the time he was 4 years old, his mother took him into the Kingdom Hall's meeting hall. And a few years earlier, when his mother accompanied her husband on overseas assignments, a Japanese friend invited her to study English and the Bible, and she began interacting with local believers. He became one of her few sources of emotional support during her sometimes lonely life abroad. And after she returned to Japan, she joined the church and became a devoted believer. Since her childhood, her meeting place has been a scary place. During meetings, if she spoke privately, doodled, or messed with other children. Now, this is the translation issue here. So it's saying since her, it's talking about him, that young man that we're talking about, who's the HLC member, disfellowshipped. So since his childhood, his meeting place had been a scary place. And during the meetings, if he spoke privately, doodled, or messed with other children, he was immediately taken to a special room in the basement. And he had multiple shoehorns on the spot, and he was spanked so many times on his butt that he got bruises. So he wanted to see his mother smile. Even at a young age, the difference between them and the families around them was obvious. During birthdays and Christmas parties, and at his kindergarten, he was made to wait alone in a separate room. He says, when I was in the 4th grade of elementary school, there was a school song test in music class, and only one student had to sing a different song. Each time he received mocking looks from the surrounding children. Still in front of his mother, he acted obediently as if he believed in the doctrine, and even his test scores are good, or how fast he runs. Her mother doesn't praise him. She did, however, smile widely and complimented him on how well he could recite the Bible and how well he explained the teachings during the missionary visit in the area. So he said he wanted to see that smile more, and when his mother, when he entered middle school and high school, he began to visit the Kingdom Hall less frequently due to his discomfort with the doctrine. However, because he had friends from the same generation who grew up the same way, he was never completely separated from the cult. His turning point came in the spring of his 3rd year of high school. He developed a chronic nephritis that is difficult to treat. And I looked that up. It's a chronic development. It's nephritis, develops slowly and causes few symptoms in its early stages, as with acute glomerulitis. This condition can cause severe kidney damage and kidney failure, and it may run in families or develop after a sudden disease. So it is something. I didn't know what it was. And he said it was difficult to treat. His body feels weak, and he has symptoms such as blood in the urine, and he could no longer run. His dream for the future was to become a businessman and work all over the world like his father. He felt as if his life options have been narrowed down at such a young age, and he felt a sense of despair. From despair to pioneer. And this can happen. This is interesting. At times like these, Jehovah's Witnesses provide emotional support. In the future, I will graduate from university and do volunteer work while working at a low-load job. He felt like the environment he grew up in would accept him. After living as a Roni for a year, he entered the a university in Tokyo. However, his medical examination immediately after his admission revealed he had no symptoms of chronic nephritis. So it went away, his disease. The doctor looked surprised and diagnosed him as completely cured. Looking back, he says, I believe the medication and the dietary care were successful. But at the time, he says, I thought maybe it's a gift from Jehovah God. And you know how that is, folks? Something good happens in a person's life and, well, Jehovah God must be doing it. He must be helping me. But it's just something that happens, So here he is. He, he went on a diet, it sounded like, and tried some things, and his condition cleared up. So he says, maybe it's a gift from Jehovah God. So the believers, the people around the Kingdom Hall, they're trying to get this guy in. They say they were surprised, and he said it out loud. I have become a pioneer and give back to God. So the church calls its members pioneers who dedicate 90 hours a month. That was way back when they were doing 90 hours a month to the missionary work. So his illness was cured, his physical strength was restored, and he also had expectations from those around him. So he will become a pioneer and live by the doctrine. With this in mind, he dropped out of university in the summer of his second year. So this young man's health cleared up. He was in university. He was going to be a businessman like his dad. And all these Jehovah's Witnesses, because his mom was going to the Kingdom Hall, they're all around him. And they said, it's from Jehovah. It's from Jehovah. Now you got to give back. Now you got to give back. And you'll hear this kid's probably thinking, what am I going to do? So that's what he did. Quit university. Okay, well, here's what happened. The smile my mother showed me. He loved his mother's smile. And he said from morning until evening, he preaches in front of train stations and door to door in various locations. In the evenings, he studies the Bible. He lived like that day after day. His work was highly praised, and he was given the opportunity to speak in front of about 10,000 believers at the church's conference. So that'd be like at one of the big assemblies, right? That's what he said at the outset. At the young age of 31, he was also appointed as an elder, a leader in the cult, and in charge of caring for believers. His mother couldn't have smiled more at her son's appointment as an elder. It was the smile I had always wanted to see. So, a mother's smile, a mother's approval, that has a lot of power. And so you get these parents, that are in the cult, and the children are really, this kid was going to university. He could have been a doctor or something. But anyway, he became a pioneer, but he loved his mother's smile. So daily life of judging as a promotion executive. Interesting title. 34 years old now. So that's like 3 years later, about 2 years after becoming an elder, he says. He was also selected as a member of the Healthcare Liaison Committee, HLC. And based on the doctrine that prohibits blood transfusions for believers, his role is to connect believers who require surgery with medical institutions that can provide treatment without blood transfusions. As a result of his insistence on no blood transfusions, he saw and heard many cases where people ended up in tragic situations. During his birth, he bled, and both mother and fetus could not be saved. This is an experience he's talking about. And his parents opposed the surgery, so the 2-year-old boy was unable to receive the treatment. And he sometimes felt uncomfortable. This is the liaison elder. He felt uncomfortable. However, he believed the teaching that if you don't have a blood transfusion, you can go to the paradise. And he carried out the duties given to him. So he probably watched a lot of people die. That's what he's talking about here. And it's at birth when this is needed, especially if there's a C-section. That's when there's a lot of blood loss. So one of his duties as an elder was to conduct interviews before the committee of inquiry. And it's a place where believers suspected of violating the doctrine are heard and judged. So probably, the HLC, that's the thing. They're sitting there, they're watching. And if they find out you violate the blood doctrine, you're in a committee meeting. And it sounds like that's what he's talking about here. He said at one trial committee, he judged a man in his 30s and a woman in her 20s who were accused of having sex outside marriage, based on textbooks distributed to the elders book that would be. He inquired in detail about when, where, how, and how often they had sex. Can you imagine? This is what goes on in the elders' meetings. Because if they need to know, like the sin was sex, isn't that good enough? But they want all the little details, and it's crazy. That in itself, well, I think they talk about it, is sexual perversion. Those questions. He says questions also covered matters such as positions used when touching each other's bodies. Can you imagine that? Like, why does anybody need to know that? And as they kept making excuses, he thought they were believers who have succumbed to the temptations of the devil. And that's what these elders believe. That's what elders believe. And he gave him the cold stare. This is, you ever got the cold stare? I've been in so many elders meetings. He says, as a result, he steadily rose in rank within the cult, So that's what the cult wants. They want these types of elders. However, about 10 years ago, when he turned 40, his situation changed dramatically after he discovered some fraud within the cult. Now, this is interesting. Listen to this. At the time, the church pioneers, or the Kingdom Hall pioneers, were required to serve at least 720 hours a year. And that's when I was doing it. That's what it was. So that it went down to 70 hours at this time. And he says one day he was looking through the materials within the order, within the Kingdom Hall or the church. He was an elder, right? So he's probably looking over the records, all the service records. And he noticed that his fellow elders had not met that requirement, that regular pioneer end of the year requirement, had not met it for the past several years. So after some hesitation, he blew the whistle. And this was because he did not think he was worthy of being a model elder for those around him. However, the upper management, like the CO, the circuit overseer, ignored the complaints. However, he continued to raise the issue with the upper management, the circuit overseers. Maybe he wrote letters to Bethel. Probably did. And as a result, he was labeled as rebellious. So that is in the elders book. I found it once, and I'm going to show you that in a bit. So we're going to go to the rest of the article. So he was labeled as rebellious because he caught these guys kind of padding the records, lying. Now, in all fairness, when I was regular pioneering, there was a clause kind of in there. We talked and had the meeting, went through pioneer school. You could still be a pioneer if you didn't meet your hours and you had a good excuse. So let's say in my case, I have worldly parents. Let's say my mom died and my dad's not around. So I had to go and look after her, take care of her, deal with things, or she was close to death or whatever. And I had to take some time off, maybe go up and do that for a month. Well, then at the year end, I'd put that excuse down. And if the circuit overseer was fine with it, he'd punch it through because they want pioneers. They want to keep pioneers. So I might only had maybe you got to get 720 hours. Maybe I only got 600 hours out that year. They'll punch me through till next year, and then so on and so forth. And so every year you could have excuses. So if you could imagine an elder, and an elder says to the circuit overseer, I didn't get my hours last year because we had so many judicial committee meetings and we had so many responsibilities and so many of this. So the circuit overseer is going to check it and say, yeah, we'll move you on to next year. So this could happen several years, could be kind of a thing. Maybe a few elders catch on and start doing it. Maybe they are busy. Maybe they just can't get the hours in, but they want a pioneer. They want the prestige pioneer elder. That's pretty powerful, right? Like this young 30-year-old, 40-year-old, they were putting them on assembly programs. You get up there, you feel pretty good. All these 10,000 people in front of you giving talks. These guys feel powerful. So they all want it. They all want it. And it's interesting how this all comes down on them. But it was kind of like a flip-flop. But these elders, they might not get their hours in. And I think there's a lot of that going on. Now it's really changed, because now as a publisher, you don't even have to count your hours. You just got to check the box, say I went out in the ministry. So they've lightened up on this. But back then, when this guy was taxed, everything, the hours, they want you to get the hours in. So here, this brother, HLC member, he was concerned about these other elders lying and getting away with it year after year. And there's probably a little bit of a scam going on, and he exposed it. And then he exposed it again, and no one's doing anything. You see, the circuit overseer is behind this. He's signing off on this every year. He reads the records too. So now the circuit overseer says, how are we going to shut this guy up? He won't shut up. He's calling us all liars. So here's what happened. A sudden turn of events. Cold gaze is on me. They were called to the church facility for a discussion. He was. It says they, but it's the translation. He says, when I entered the room, I was instructed to sit facing 8 elders wearing suits, sitting in a semicircle. He found himself before the hearing committee. The elders' gazes were cold. It was the same thing he had been showered with before, that he did to other people. He frantically repeated his own assertion. I just want to correct the injustice, he kept telling these guys. Why are you correcting it? However, every time he spoke, he was interrupted and said, I never heard of that. And he was unilaterally questioned to admit his fault. And after going through several hearing committees, so you see, you appeal it. So let's say they say we're going to disfellowship you appeal it, and then you have 3 more elders that come in, and then they get the circuit overseer involved, and here they pulled in a guy from Bethel. They had 8 people in there. He says, I felt like everything I had built up was falling apart. And when a person is ostracized, they are cut off from their relationships, not only with their fellow followers, but also with their relatives. The night before the punishment was handed down, I sat down to eat with his parents and younger sister at his parents' home. And his family, he thought his family should understand, and he thought so. He protested his innocence. But his mother said, it's all decided by Jehovah God. Even if you're right, it can't be helped. You see, Jehovah God, you see, they hold this higher authority. The elders, the elder book, the circuit overseer, these guys are all high authorities. So here this poor guy was just questioning these guys about lying, padding their service time, getting away with it every year. And he got disfellowshipped for what they call rebellion. So he says in the article here, I can no longer see my mother's smile. Since that day, even when I visit my parents' house, the front door no longer opens. His grandmother passed away about 5 years ago, but there was no notice of a funeral, so he didn't even get invited to his grandmother's funeral. Wanting to please his mother, he became a devout believer in the first place. His doctrine was also believed to be correct, but now that he left the cult, I think all of that is abnormal. There are many human rights issues within the cult, such as broken family ties and suffering as a second-generation believers. And there are still many people who are suffering. I want people to be aware of the current situation, he says. So now we get into some other articles here. I was just going to cover off on that one, but there's a lot of articles in Mexico. In Japan, I'm sorry, not Mexico. But I'll paste this link to this in the description of the video, so if you want to read through it, you can. And it just kind of gives a summary on what that video we seen gave. But I thought that was interesting. Now, you'll notice they talk a lot about the society. When I was a Jehovah's Witness, they did talk that, the society says that, the society says this. Now, who is the society? What is the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society? So I looked it up. and it's out of Pennsylvania. It's a company. And according to its charter, the corporation's purposes are religious, educational, and charitable, in particular to preach and teach the gospel, the kingdom, right? Memberships in the corporation is by invitation only. So here's what I thought was interesting. Memberships in this society is by invitation only and is not based on how much a person has donated. And the corporation's members and directors assist the governing body. So there's kind of like a secret society here that runs behind the scenes, and these guys are elected in. So it's interesting what's going on in the background, and they kind of talk about it here, and they allude to this society a lot. But now we're going to look at the Elders book. I plugged in rebellion. It only came up once in the Elders book. Now on the thumbnail, from the lawyer's perspective, they called this resisting against society. So there's probably some other information, but all I could find is rebellion. And when I go back here, we'll just blow this up a bit so you can see it. Okay, so there it is. It's under apostasy. And apostasy is a standing away from true worship, a falling away, a deflection, a rebellion, an abandonment, and it includes a following. So that's what apostasy is. It's rebellion. So in this case, it's a rebellion against the circuit overseer, a rebellion against the other elders for lying, for padding their hours. If they can't meet the regular pioneer hours every year, why are they getting the title of being a regular pioneer? That's what this brother's complaint was. It was an honest complaint. But he got disfellowshipped for rebellion because he thought he'd run this up. He thought that he was in the right here. Because when I put into the Elders book lying, let's put in lying. Lying comes up. Well, lying is a disfellowshipping offense, and it comes up a whole bunch of times. Lying. Here it is. Deliberate, malicious lying, bearing false witness. Though all lying is bad, judicial action is taken only if there has been a practice of deliberate, malicious lying. Now, maybe what it was is they didn't consider the lying to be malicious. You see, Jehovah's Witnesses now are going to court and lying, and they call it strategic theocratic warfare. And it's okay because it's not malicious. It's just to kind of save Jehovah's name, get them out of court so things don't get exposed. But maybe because the lying, they didn't consider it malicious. It was just these guys wanted more regular pioneers in the congregation. They couldn't honestly get their hours in. They were just lying. So malicious means deliberately harmful, harboring ill will or enmity. Maybe that's how they got around it. Lying that requires judicial action involves more than just exaggeration or petty, misleading statements of relatively minor consequences, or lying because of momentary pressure or fear of man. See, there's nothing in here about lying to get more hours. Maybe that's okay. I don't know. But I do know that the Bible does talk about lying in a very serious way. In fact, let's look at it. Okay, here we are. Proverbs 6:16-19. There are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him. Haughty eyes. Number 2, a lying tongue. It doesn't say anything about harmful lying, this lying, a lying tongue. So if these guys are padding their hours, lying basically, telling the congregation that year after year for several years that they're regular pioneers and they're really not, I would say that'd be a bit of lying. In fact, that'd be a bit of boasting. That'd be a bit of vanity. There'd be a bit of narcissism in there. There'd be a lot of things. Why would they want to do that? So here he gets them. It's right in the Bible. The hands that are, it goes on to talk about the rest of the evil things. But and he even says that a false witness who breathes out lies. Well, wouldn't that be what that was all about? A false witness who breathes out lies. The circuit overseer, he's lying too. He's behind it all. So, and one who sows discord among others. Isn't that what they did to this guy? 8 of them, they gang up on him. And this happens, folks. It's like bullies ganging up on you question after question. And if it's a sexual related, they want to know every position, everything. There was situations where they were taking pictures inside girls' skirts, things like that. This was happening in elders' meetings. So, and I may have that a bit wrong, but it was in that article. So you'll read it for yourself, but that's kind of what we have here. Lying is a bad thing. But this guy here, he got nailed for resisting the society. Got disfellowshipped for it. So here he is. He's being represented by that lawyer in Japan, KT, the Tanaka attorney. That's who's done this one. So that's who's posting this stuff on Twitter. So this is all coming out. He's got a good lawyer behind him. And how they dealt with him, how they bullied him, and how they disfellowshipped him, that is all coming out. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future. So stick with us. We'll keep you up to date on the latest news. So that's all I have for you today on this. So until next time, keep living your life with love. Bye for now. Oh, hello. Join the channel. We cover JW World News, and we give you the rest of the story. Today, we're going to the Watchtower, and we have lives on Tuesday nights and Saturdays, and an excellent community. So join the channel and watch as we crash into the Watchtower. Here it is. I see it coming. Woo! Join us as we report in on the Watchtower.